Hi everyone, it's Jackie at Spare Room Studio. Today I'm going to colour in Mythographic Animals by Joseph Cath, that's the cover there. And I'm going to colour the Hummingbird page. Cath on Instagram suggested this one to me, so I'm going to have a go. I do have my Crayola Supertips here. I have the 100 box. And I also have the pastel set, which comes in a box that looks like that. I thought I might start with the pastel colours first, but we'll see. I don't stay pastel for very long. I've got an old plate to do my colour mixing on. I hope I'm straight there. And I've got a old jar here that has a lid with some water in, and I have some paint brushes in case I need some finer areas, and I also have my favourite water brushes. What I might do is just change the nib over because I don't tend to use that one very often. And this old frayed nib is the one that I've been using a lot. So I just make sure I've got a full water barrel. And I've got a couple of small brushes to hand that I can use as well. And I'm just going to grab some paper towel to have on standby. And we will get started. I'm sorry I'm a little bit disorganised. I have had a busy day, but felt like doing some colouring, so I decided I'd jump in and I'll record it. Hopefully we get something worth recording. And it might help Cath out. She's been experimenting with her Supertips, Crayola Supertips, and she's decided that the Mythographic Animals book is going to be like her playbook, which is really great. I'm glad to hear that somebody is trying that. I like hearing your feedback and finding out how that's working for you. It helps me know whether I'm on the right track, whether I'm actually helping you. If I'm not helping you, I'd like to hear that as well, just for a little bit of feedback. It helps me sort of plan my approach if I know the sorts of questions that people have and the potential problems that they might be having, so I can address it in the video. So it's all good to hear that feedback is very handy, so I do appreciate it a lot. Okay, I have Hamish in the background. Hopefully he's going to behave himself. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to start with the Hummingbird, and I seem to have a bit of blue left in my brush here from the last time that I used it. Now, don't forget, if you are using a different book to me, you may not get the same results that I'm getting because of the paper. Every book reacts a little bit differently, and we may even have the same book, but if mine has been printed here in Australia, particularly Amazon books, if I've got a book that's been printed in a different country to you, that could even be affecting your results. So take these little demos as jumping off or starting points, and know that potentially you might run into some different issues that I'm going to have. Pardon me. And also try to keep in mind too that I do have an art background. I have studied and attended art lessons in the past. It was many years ago now, but it gave me a very, very solid ground that I pull from now. The knowledge that I pull from now is based on what I learnt in a lot of my lessons. So please do also keep that in mind. Somebody did ask me if I had an art background. If you haven't seen my earlier videos, I did talk about in one video where I introduced myself and I talked a little bit about my background. So yes, I have had some art not training, but I have attended art-based subjects at school. And I'm also, to a certain extent, self-taught because I like to watch lots of videos. I spend quite a bit of time watching instructional type demo videos on YouTube. Not so much now, but I have in the past. And I like to read, so I have a quite decent library of instructional books that I've collected over the years. And I don't look at them now. They're there if I need them, but I don't tend to dip into them very often. And perhaps sometimes I should. I sometimes think that when I'm getting a little bit stale and stuck in my little rut of working, that sometimes it would pay to get some of those books out again and revisit some ideas. And I've already got a few little splashes down here. You can see I'm not particularly careful when I work. I certainly don't recommend that to the rest of you, but if you are messy like me, then take heart that not everyone is completely organised and tidy about how they go about their art. I also had another question, which was, could we use these Crayola Supertips in this manner with our original art or drawings? And definitely, for sure, you can. You need to make sure that you've got waterproof ink, and I would suggest that you do quite a few tests with your ink before you commit to doing it directly onto an original drawing that you have created, because if you've spent a lot of time drawing a composition and getting it just right, you want to be pretty certain that your ink is going to be waterproof. And I would suggest that you ink your drawing and leave it quite some time to dry thoroughly, so even possibly overnight. And make sure that that ink is completely dry before you add any water onto it. And you can work with Crayola Supertips to create your own drawings. A word of caution though, these are very much budget-priced, student-grade products that are basically aimed at children, and they are not light fast in any way. They don't profess to be light fast, and they definitely will not be. Now, even when you use artist-grade materials and pigments and so on, you still need to be cautious about where you put your artwork. Anything that's going to be direct in the line of natural light has the potential to fade. And I would say that these Crayola Supertips worked in this method are definitely going to fade. And even if your artwork is on a wall in a room that's not in direct sunlight, if there is strong light in the room, there's still potential for it to fade. So you have to give really careful thought to where you display your work. And keep that in mind. If you're going to do sketchbook work and your drawings are going to stay in a closed sketchbook and you're only going to look at them every now and again, by all means, I would imagine they're going to be pretty, pretty good to use in that circumstance, like I do with my colouring books. They get looked at every now and again, but I do not display them. I don't have them open to natural light for very long. And I certainly have no intention of creating that sort of artwork. I purely colour in books because I got to the point where I was creating original art. And when I talk about original art, I mean mostly watercolour painting and coloured pencil drawings that I was framing for sale. And I got to the point where I didn't want to sell it anymore, and I really didn't know what to do with the work. I've got enough artwork on my walls at home, and I didn't want to, give everything away. And so I stopped creating original art because I just didn't know what to do with it. And I enjoyed watercolour and I enjoyed coloured pencils and, creating something visually. And so that's when I turned to adult colouring books, because I happened to come across one in a store near me. And then I started looking online and realised just how many people were actually colouring in adult colouring books. And that's how it evolved to where it is today, that I don't create the original art anymore, but this is my creation in a colouring book, and that's sufficient for me. I like to be able to close the book, put it away on the bookshelf when I'm finished, and have no issues with storing it and so on. So that was a very long-winded answer to say that yes, you can use waterproof ink to ink a drawing and then colour your own work this way. And again, it will depend on your sketchbook or your paper, whatever you're using to create your art on, what type of result you're going to get. If you're going to use it on watercolour paper, you're probably going to get some really nice results. It'll probably work quite well. So I'm going to put a different set of greens down now for the foliage. I'm going to go traditional with the colours because I've used the blues, greens and purples for the hummingbird, and I want to keep it very much in that family of colours. So I will stick with a fairly natural palette of colours for the foliage. I might bring some of these blues into it. I'm thinking more so than the yellow green there. I don't really like that, so we might just wipe that off so that I don't inadvertently pick that up. So I'm just getting a selection of bluey greens and pale blues to do the foliage in the background with. And you can see that on the plate there, they are very much blue based. And I'll just start. So far I've used a little combination of wetting the paper first and then adding the colour into the damp paper, and now I'm using a damp brush onto dry paper. And you do get slightly different results when you work in the different ways, so have a play around to work out what is your favourite method or the favourite result. I'm just going to drop a little bit of water in there. It all seems a bit dry for my liking. I like to work very much wet in wet. So I'm going to pick out some of these leaves that look like they're all pretty much from the same type of plant, the same shapes. And then the other leaves I'm going to try for a different colour green so that we get some sort of variation. I find with Joseph's work, it is very, very busy and detailed, and particularly this book, because it has the hidden objects as well, it can get really difficult to pick out some of these details. I'd like to recommend, if you're interested in this particular book, if you'd like to see somebody who colours it exceptionally well, in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion. But if you'd like to check out on Instagram, Sue C Colouring, I'll tag her in the description box. But Sue colours this book brilliantly, in my opinion. And I really admire the work that she's been doing in this book, and she must be getting pretty close to completing it, because she's done a lot of work in here. But Sue has a very good way of picking out the details and the colours, and she makes it look very harmonious. Sometimes I put too many colours into these mythographic pages and I lose all focus, and I lose the sense of what's important in the picture. But Sue does a brilliant job. It's just very difficult sometimes to pick, if you choose a certain shape leaf or a certain plant, it can be really difficult to pick out that one plant amongst so much that's going on. Okay, I'm going to try for some different greens. So back to that 100 set, because I just feel like the pastel set might be a little bit too pale. So I'd like to say thank you to those of you who have been having a go at this particular technique in your books and letting me know how you're getting on, or tagging me so that I can see them. It's been really nice to have a look at what you're doing, and I'm really pleased that some of you are feeling confident to move out of your comfort zone. and that you feel encouraged to do that. It's really good because, you know, we can't really expand our skills or learn new things if we stay within our comfort zone all the time. And I'd also like to say, I know that some of you are nervous about doing it, and that's okay as well. You don't have to try it. You know, this is just an option for you if you're feeling like you need to try something different and you want to expand your horizons a little bit into other styles. You know, go for it. But if you don't, if you're feeling hesitant and you're not sure about it, and you know, you're feeling really hesitant, then by all means don't do it yet either. You know, you can always save my video and come back to it at another time. If you're on Instagram, all of my pages get put onto Instagram. It's my little visual journal for my own sake, for my progress, and so I can look back and see what I've done. But they're all there. All the pages are there, and you can go back and you can have a look at any time. And it really is just, you know, these are just suggestions for you. You don't have to do this technique exactly the way that I'm doing it. If you find another method that is working for you and you're getting the results that you're liking, you know, that's great. That's what it's all about. It's all about encouraging you to look at the things that I'm doing as a starting point. And I certainly don't envisage that you create something exactly like I have. I wouldn't expect you to, and I don't expect to create things that look exactly like anybody else's work either. That's not my thing. I'm not into that. And so I would expect, with the way that I demonstrate and explain things, that you're not going to be creating pages that look exactly like mine either. You know, I don't expect you to. And I really strongly recommend that you don't. You know, don't try to copy it. Just look at the way that I do it. Just look at the, you know, the methods that I'm using, the colours that I'm using. And think about how you can incorporate that into your style, and you can start creating your own unique look, your own unique way of working. And I dare say that there's going to be quite a few of you who will have a go at this and really not enjoy it. It's not going to be for you. And I would fully expect that to happen as well. Just as, you know, I used to work very tightly and want very smooth blends, you know, very graduated blends, and I wanted to try and make everything on the page look like it was real. And I've since moved away from that because I discovered that I wasn't actually enjoying that. That's not my thing. And yet I can look at the work of someone who does work that way. I'm thinking about Chris Cheng, Olivia Oderon, and Karen at My Colourful Country Life, who is just, you know, amazing at the patience and the work that she puts into blending things. And I greatly enjoy looking at all of those people's work, and I admire it very much. But I've decided that that is not my goal or my thing. It does not bring me joy when I try to work that way. I've discovered that I find it makes me feel frustrated, and quite often it can make me feel that I have a lot of hand and wrist pain if I try to blend things really heavily. And I've got into the way of working where I want fast results. I don't generally like to have pages that are lingering on past one session of colouring. So what I mean by that is if I start this in the afternoon and I finish it tonight in front of the TV, then I consider that a page well done. If I come to, back to it in a few days' time, there's a very, very good chance that I will have lost interest in it. And I certainly don't keep the notes and mark down the pencils and colours and so on. So if I do come back to something, it's potluck as to whether I actually do manage to pick up the same colours again. And I've mentioned to you before too that that's my natural working style, and I have no interest in starting to keep notes. Occasionally I might take a photograph, snap a photo if there's some pencils out or whatever. But even then I don't tend to come back and look at it, so that's pointless as well. So all that to say, really, it's up to you to discover your natural strengths and your weaknesses. And when it comes to a hobby like colouring, it's really good to work to your strengths. And it's nice to challenge yourself every now and again, especially when you're feeling like you need that sort of change of scene. But there really is no point in forcing yourself to work in a certain way that brings you no joy at all. This hobby, for most of us, is a chance to unwind, de-stress, get some creative wins, something that makes us feel good. And so it shouldn't feel torturous, and it shouldn't feel like a chore. So allow yourself to work with those natural strengths. It's like I discovered some time ago too that unless pencils are numbered, when they come to you, when you purchase them, that they're numbered. There's a little bit of wing there. I don't always put them back into the cases in order. Even when they've got numbers on them, that can feel tedious to me as well at times, sometimes, like I just want to get them back off the table and back in the case or the box or whatever and done with. I can't be bothered putting them into colour order, and colour families is good enough for me. If it's roughly in, reds are all together, blues are all together, greens are all together, and so on. That tends to be about as good as it gets for me. So I stopped making myself do it. You know, it just, the things that were sucking the joy from what I was doing, I've stopped doing it. So if this feels like it might be something for you that you think you might enjoy and have a, you know, like to have a go at, by all means jump in, do it. But I just don't want anyone who's hesitant, who's sort of sitting on the fence and feels like they have to give it a go. Don't feel that way. You don't have to. So I'm going to do a combination here of just adding some marker in as well. Okay, don't forget, the watercolour thing is nice, but we can also bring in some of this direct onto the paper with the markers as well. Especially these smaller areas. So that's an option for you as well. And you can also, when this is dry properly, you can also come back with the same colour that you've used and just put some of those smaller details back in. That's a bit difficult when it's all watery. And then you can also use your water brush, or indeed just a small brush with the pot of water. You can soften that back off as well so you don't have any hard lines. Okay, so we're going to start bringing in some, I'd like to do, I think pinky peachy colours for the flowers. There were some really pretty peaches and pinks in this pastel set that are really delicate, really pretty. And some of those will be lovely just done directly onto the paper as well. So, you know, we can do some areas like that. I've still got a little bit of green there on that brush, which is making an interesting mix. We'll just see how that works. Just be careful using the marker directly into damp paper. It can disturb the surface of the paper quite a bit, but you know, you can get some really interesting effects doing that as well. So those pastel colours are really very delicate and very nice, very, very pretty. Okay, so that's an idea of, you know, a different way that you can incorporate the markers into the drawing along with this watercolour effect. Remember, you don't have to solely do a page in one method. You can mix and match to get exactly what you want. You know, have a play, keep experimenting. I think we'll go for some deeper pink for this rose, what looks like a rose anyway to me, over here. just so it looks different, because it is a different flower. And we'll go back to these sort of peachy pinks for all the other. These, I don't know what they are. To me, they remind me very much of dog roses. I don't know. I like flowers. I love flowers a lot, but I don't know all their names. But that's what it reminds me of very much, what I call a dog rose. And sometimes I don't always know what the items are in these jumbled up compositions. Sorry, put my teeth back in. And if I don't know what it is, I fudge it a little bit by just thinking, okay, what colour am I lacking? And it might not actually be a flower, but it's going to get a bit of, you know, the peachy pink put into it just to balance the picture out. And it may not be an actual flower, but that's how I get around it when I'm not sure what an item might be. Because it can be hard to pick apart some of these details sometimes. And I'm thinking radishes have that sort of nice deep reddish purple sometimes, so we might lean towards purple. It's not red, but we'll lean towards that for now. We can always put more into it later. Remember, with watercolour, it's really important to work up to your deepest colours. You know, it's really important not to go in too early with your deepest, darkest colours, but work up to deepening that, because it's always harder to lighten it back off again, especially delicate flowers and things like that. You can add the white to it, but it kind of deadens that lovely watercolour effect or feel that we're trying to go for. These little flowers, I'm not sure, or leaves, I'm not sure what they are, but because the Hummingbird's quite green, I'm going to go for a more of a bluish purple. So we'll go for that colour. And that colour. I sort of think, you know, like I'm thinking wisteria, but I know it's not wisteria, but that was the sort of colours that I'm thinking. And not too dark at this stage, because I might come back with coloured pencils at the end if I feel like it. And I might also leave some of those white. Or I might even use the marker itself. That's always an option. But we'll start off lightly, just get that colour in there so I know what colours I'm using where. And then we can sort all the other details out later as we go along. This is really just sort of getting a balance of the colours. So it's all pretty light to mid-tone at the moment. We've got a birdhouse or something in here. Yeah, birdhouse. I might just actually go. You can see there I'm only holding this at the very end of the marker very lightly just to get that colour in there, but I'm not being very precise about it. I don't really want the hidden objects to stand out too obviously either at this point. If it feels like at the end that it will be good to make it a feature, I can add more to it at the end, but at this stage I don't want to do that. Now there was actually some flowers in there, but I've turned that into foliage by making it green. And also with these very busy pictures that are in the Mythographic, you can also pick out some of the lovely prettier details with a metallic or sparkly gel pen or something as well if you want to make that a feature. You know, like there's a sewing needle with thread there, so if you decide you want to make that a feature, you can put the metallics in there and draw the eye to it that way. Otherwise you can use, you know, very basic mid-tone colours and make it disappear, or attempt to make it disappear. Okay, so now I'm going to think about putting a background in, because I'm getting into about 40 minutes of working this way and yapping, and it's probably getting close to a point to cut off and end it for this session. So for the background, I've got lots of drops in here as well to disguise. I don't really want to bring in any of these colours that are in here, because then it gets confusing. So I want to go for a contrasting colour. Gosh, this is a hard one. What's this deep? This is the darkest pink out of the... No, that's the darkest pink out of the pastel set. I'm just going to clean that. You know, the standard go-to for me is when I can't think of anything else, let's make it sky and it will be blue, but let's try and get away from that a little bit. I think maybe, what about if we can find a deep grey that I can make, or set of greys, and then I can put like a contrasting colour into it, like a purple. That could be interesting. So again, you know, you're seeing me, this is my thinking on the hop, because I didn't plan. That might be quite dramatic, quite like that. Okay, let's have a see. So what I'm going to do is wet the background first. Let's make sure you're on there. Now the Mythographic paper, you might be able to see that the water is soaking in quite quickly there. And I'm also not all that great at staying in straight lines of borders either. And this is the strange sort of marks and effects that you get working very wet onto dry paper. So if the paper isn't evenly wet, you're going to get some very odd odd markings. So this particular method, working very, very wet in wet and blotchy, isn't great on mythographic paper. Okay? So if you don't get the same results as me, don't stress, because this is very hit and miss. Like very, very hit and miss. So when you've watched me work in other books, and you've seen that watercolour bleeding sort of bloom out really nicely, this paper's not doing that. It's not doing it at all. So Cath, if you're watching this and you're in your project book and you're getting a bit disheartened if you feel like you're not getting quite the same watercolour effects, it is quite difficult paper, so do know that. But you can find workarounds with it as well. The good thing about it is that it is single-sided, so we don't have to worry about ruining an image on the back side of it. So, you know, we can get very heavy-handed with the water because it's not going to ruin an image behind, but what it will do is make the paper very, very wrinkly. So keep that in mind. See, it's not, when I do that into the water, we're not getting all that lovely big, you know, watery bloom and bleeding that I was getting with the other books. It just does not work the same in this book. But we can get different results if we work at it. That can be, hopefully, just as interesting. You know, different but still interesting and experimental. I'm just going to use that little small brush to get into some of these tinier areas. If you haven't worked with watercolour before and you decide to use a small brush like this and a pot of water, you can put your brush, leave your brush resting in your pot for short periods of time, but do not leave your brush sitting in the pot for a great length of time, because it will ruin the tip of your brush and it will bend it over, and your brush won't be any good. So keep that in mind. It's really not a great idea to leave a watercolour brush standing in a pot of water. So if you're going to have it ready nearby, maybe have some paper towel. I've just rinsed mine off and I've got my brush sitting on a piece of paper towel now because I don't want to ruin that brand new brush tip. So it has to be very, very wet for this paper to do the sort of wild blending and bleeding that I was getting on other pages. And you can see there working onto dry paper, it's actually it's not nice at all. It leaves really weird marks. So I think you need to wet this paper quite a bit. And then have this colour quite wet as well. And you have to work quite quickly because as soon as that paper starts to dry, all these blending watery effects stop. The colour's not even hardly moving at all. And I'm making it really hard for myself getting into these very fine areas with such a big, bulky water brush. But if I don't quite get right up to the edges, I might bring a coloured pencil in to just get those edges crisped up. I'm doing very well with words today. Defined, to make them more crisp. That's probably better English. Some days it really is quite difficult concentrating on the fine details and using words. And that's all bled into there on its own anyway, but that's okay, we'll deal with that as we go along. And I haven't gone quite up to the line there. And I'm just going to drop some clear water into bits and just see if it does do anything at all. It's not doing it immediately, but it might dry a little bit lighter and different. So if you're curious, this lovely deep dark, it's almost like an indigo blue. It actually looks like purple on the cap. I don't know if that's showing up on camera as purple, but it looks very purple. And yeah, it's more like an indigo, deep indigo blue. So I'm just going to squeeze lots of water in here and let's see what happens. What tends to happen for me is I have an idea in my head how I think that this paper will react, and I start off a bit cautious, and then I get a bit annoyed when it doesn't do exactly what I want it to do. And then I tend to think, oh, well, you know, in for a penny, in for a pound, let's just whack the water on and see what happens. Whack the water on and deal with the consequences. So I hope that I've remembered to answer some of the questions that have come up. If there's anything else that anybody would like to know, do please leave me a comment. Remind me if you've asked something that I haven't quite covered or you need more information. Also, don't be too nervous about covering up any of these little small details that make no sense. Another of my Instagram friends, Axic Fumbles, is fabulous at using acrylic paint or alcohol marker or something that's nice and deep and dark to cover up any small details that don't make any sense. She has no qualms at all about doing that. And so, you know, if you get something on the page here that just, you know, it doesn't seem to fit in anywhere and it doesn't seem to make any sense at all. For example, like some of these petals, if you were working with alcohol marker or acrylic paint or something like that, you can just cover it up. It's a little bit harder with watercolour because watercolour isn't so opaque, but you could have a watercolour picture and still maybe finish it off with an acrylic background if there's something in there that you really don't like. And I've just slipped off of the plate there and messed up. We shall try to incorporate that into there now. So honestly, I do feel like sometimes I should rename this channel Warts and All Colouring, because you do see just how slapdash I am sometimes. That's all bleeding into that pink flower there, but that's unfortunate, but we'll try and sort that out. I really am soaking this bit, so it's not really surprising that's happened. I'll show you at the end. Just what's happened there. Now, if you've got any mobility issues or you have pain in your hands, any sort of shakiness or whatever, you can still paint. But don't expect to get really highly detailed, close details in you know, with a paintbrush. But you can incorporate some of that shakiness into your work. So if you work this way and you want to get much more abstract, don't go too close up to the picture if you've got those shakes, but you know, you can still use your paintbrush back here and get some random stuff happen, which is less, you know, low pressure for yourself with your hands and everything. I know sometimes I feel like my thumbs ache a bit, and I don't hold the brush with as much control as I used to. So it is a bit hard for some of these highly detailed compositions, but you know, there are other books with much more open space and bigger pictures that you can work with the brush like this really loosely, especially in just the background even. Give it a go and see what you think. And also, if you're just not using pencil or, you know, colouring the background that carefully, that will save you a little bit of hand pain as well. So you don't have to do the whole picture this way, but, you know, it cuts down a little bit of that for you. So I'm just going to drop some plain water in. Let's see what happens with that. Could be interesting. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for now. I need to start thinking about dinner. If I can't work out a way to stitch some videos together, this will be probably in a two-part series again. Let's get the worst of that off of there. I can envisage myself wearing a lot of that on my clothes if I'm not careful. Okay, so that's quite dramatic, that colour. And when I come back, I will probably need to deepen up quite a bit of colour in the middle here so that it balances with that dramatic background. But that's how the colours are looking at the moment. That paper is still very wet, so it may look different when it dries. You can see I've come over all of the details here because I just had so much water on there. And I'll try carefully to... Oh, I've gone right through there because my paper had moved. Whoops. There you go. That's a bit of a clanger. So you can see I really did saturate that paper. Wow. I didn't even think about where that paper was, and it looks like that page is going to have a bit of a blue feel about it. Oh, and I've gone through there as well. Oh, and then we've stopped. So what's that? Two pages I've gone through. Wow. I didn't even consider that at all. Never mind. That might have to be another video, how to save a page when you've done something like that to it. Okay, thank you for watching to this point if you're still with me. I did say that I would say a special hello to someone, and I forgot to do it at the beginning, but I will do it now. So Georgia, if your mummy would like to just let you know at the end of this video that I haven't forgotten you completely. I just forgot to say hello at the beginning, but thank you for buddy colouring with Evie and I, and we will do some more pages very soon. And thank you for watching some of my videos with your mummy. It is very much appreciated. So, hello and goodbye to Georgia, and goodbye to you all until the next video. Thank you for watching. Much appreciated. Bye-bye.